mathematicians. Today we are going to talk about ratios and proportions. A comparison of two or more quantities is a ratio. So we're comparing two things or more. There are multiple ways to represent a ratio. The most common typically is a fraction in simplified form. You also could say A to B. There are 5 girls to every 3 boys. Or we could say A to B. They're all read the same way. A to B, A to B, A to B. Ratios can be simplified, and I want all your fractions, if you choose to write it as a fraction, simplified. So here's our example. A music store has 40 trumpets, 39 clarinets, 24 violins, 51 flutes, and 16 trombones in stock. Give each one of these as a simplified ratio. And the order really matters. So if I'm going to write this, and I'm going to choose to do these as fractions simplified. If you choose to write it like this, that's fine as well. Please just simplify yours. Okay. So if it says trumpets to violins, trumpets have to come first. So how many trumpets are there? 40. And how many violins? 24. The last thing we have to do with this, simplify. Divide these both by 2. And that gives us 20 over 12. What else can we divide these by? I could divide by 2 again, or I could divide them both by 4. 5 over 3. You may have chose to follow a different simplified path. Just make sure that you continue to simplify until you cannot. Go ahead and do flutes to clarinets on your own. Let's see how you did. How many flutes are there? 51. How many clarinets? 39. Can you simplify this? Yes, and you might need to go back and you might need to check and do a couple of these on a calculator. 51 divided by 2. 51 divided by 3, 51 divided by 4, until you find one that fits into both. You can divide both of these by 3, and that gives us 17 over 13. So make sure you check to see if you can simplify. Let's skip to number 4. Compare violins to total instruments. How many violins are there? 24. And now it said compare it to the total. Does it come out and tell us a number for the total? No. But can we find that? How can we find the total instruments? Add all of them together, including the 24 violins. So you have to include all of them as the total. So what is the total? 170 total instruments. Go ahead and simplify that on your own. We could divide these both by 2, and that gives us 12 over 85, and that's as simple as we can get. Okay, so write it as a fraction, or you can write it out like this as well. Just make sure your answer has to be in the order that they tell you, and then simplify it. Extended ratios. A comparison of 3 or more quantities. So if we have more than 2, it's a special one. It's considered an extended. And that just means we are comparing 3 values. A to B to C. Okay. So I have 3 pieces of my comparison. So when I look at these ratios, and I'm going to talk about angles and sides of either triangles or lines or in general. Okay. The ratio of two complementary, what does it mean to be complementary? They add to 90, is 3 to 7. This means 3 times the side is the same as, or I'm talking about angles, I guess, 7 times the side. So 3 times the value is compared to 7 times the value. Okay. So those are my two angles right there. 3 times some value and 7 times some value give us our angles. What do I know about our angles? They add to be 90. And why do they add to be 90? Because they're complementary. Go ahead and solve for x. X must equal 9. But it doesn't ask us to find x. What does it ask us to find? The measure of both angles. So now that I know this, I must plug this back in. So 3 times 9 is 27 degrees. I'm talking about an angle. And how do I find the other one? 7 times 9. So that angle must be 63 degrees. Okay. This next one, it tells us they are supplementary. What does it mean to be supplementary? They add to be 180, and their ratio is 4 to 1. Go ahead and find the measure of both angles. Let's see how you did. To find each angle, first I need to set my angles up. This is 4 times some value and 1 times some value. What did we say about supplementary? They add and equal 180. When you solved for x, what did you get for x? 36. But that wasn't what it asked us. What do we have to do now to answer the question? Plug 36 back into our two pieces. So 4 times 36 and 1 times 36. My angles are 36 degrees and 144 degrees. Okay. So make sure you check to see what they're talking about. Supplementary, add to 180. Set up our pieces. 4 times the value, 1 times the value. Nice job. This next one, there are 3 pieces to my ratio. It is an extended ratio. So I'm talking about the triangle and I'm talking about the sides. So here's my ratio for the 3 sides. It also tells me perimeter. How do you find the perimeter of an object? Add up all the sides. Okay. So something I need to do with this, I have to add up all my sides at the end and equal to 392. First it asks me though to classify it based on the sides. Well, these are my scale factors and 2 of them are the same. So what type of triangle is it if 2 are the same? It is an isosceles. Isosceles. Now, just like before, how will I set up my scale factor so I can use my pieces? 3 times x, and my next one, 3 times x, and lastly, 8 times x. Now he said perimeter, we have to do what with our 3 sides? Add them. And all of this must equal 392 because it tells me that the perimeter is that. I know perimeter, add all the sides. Combine things that match. 3 plus 3 plus 8. 14x equals 392. And lastly, divide both sides by 14. X equals 28. The problem doesn't ask me to find 28. What does the problem ask me to find? The longest side. Which one of these would be the longest? 8 times x. So 8 times 28. That side would be 224 inches. Okay. So plug all those together, solve, plug it back in to find that longest side. Nice job. The next portion of this section is talking about proportions. And you've done proportions before in algebra. Proportions. A proportion is an equation that states two ratios or two fractions are equal. So I could have A over B equals C over D. You've seen these before. So two fractions equal to each other. To solve these, okay, you're going to use cross products, cross multiply. So I can multiply my diagonals. A times D will equal B times C. So we're going to cross multiply to solve these. So if I look at our first example, again, I'm going to cross multiply, so multiply diagonals. It does not matter which one you take first. I usually pick the one with the variable. It won't matter as long as you multiply on the diagonals. 2 times x is just 2x. So 2x equals 28. And lastly, how do you solve? Divide by 2, x equals 14. This time when I cross multiply, I have to be very careful with our first diagonal. This is 19 times, this has to be in parentheses. That is one piece, x minus 1. And my second diagonal, 6 times 13. So be very careful on this diagonal. Make sure you have parentheses around this piece. It's 19 times this whole piece. What are you going to have to do to solve this now on the left? Distribute. A lot of algebra still pops up in geometry. 19 times x. 19 times negative 1. 6 times 13 should be 78. And we need to solve for x. What do you do first? Add 19 to both sides. And lastly, divide by 19. X equals 5.1. So when you cross multiply, just be very careful to distribute first. Solve for x. This last one you should notice, there is no proportion yet. So let's read, and I'm going to have to fill in my 4 pieces. On a scale, it shows 1.5 centimeters represents 100 miles. What are the 2 units we are comparing? Centimeters and miles. Okay. The scale must go together. The scale must go together in the same fraction. It's really important that you put those 2 pieces together. So 1.5 centimeters goes with 100 miles. What else are we given? The distance from Atlanta to Los Angeles is 29.2 centimeters. If you have it labeled, which I am going to require you do, I can easily plug in 29.2 in which spot? On top. So make sure you label them so you know where they go. Do we know how many miles this is? No. So what goes here? An X. Make sure your scale goes together and you label so you know where to plug everything in. Go ahead and solve this one on your own. We will check together. Nice job today, mathematicians.